The Descent from the Cross, 1650-1652, attributed to an unknown painter from Rembrandt's workshop, stands as a testament to the collaborative and pedagogical atmosphere surrounding the Dutch master's studio in mid-17th century Amsterdam. Now housed in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, this oil on canvas encapsulates the intersection between Rembrandt's compositional genius and the interpretive execution of his pupils, most notably Constantijn van Rijn, who is often suggested as the painter of the final work. Although the hand that applied the paint may not be Rembrandt's own, the design bears unmistakable traces of his direction. The pyramidal composition, the interplay of light and shadow, and the emotional gravity of the scene all point toward Rembrandt's intellectual authorship. It is believed that he may have sketched or directly outlined the composition on the canvas, leaving its realization to one of his students. The result is a fascinating hybrid image steeped in Rembrandt's vision, yet filtered through the sensibilities of a young artist still learning the expressive vocabulary of his master. The scene itself, Christ's body being lowered from the cross, has been a central subject in Christian iconography since the Renaissance. In this workshop rendition, the pathos of the moment is rendered with a subdued intensity. The limp body of Christ, bathed in a soft, descending light, contrasts with the shadowed figures who carefully bear his weight. The gestures are solemn, deliberate, and reverent, while the surrounding darkness emphasizes the theological and emotional core of the composition, the triumph of sacrifice over death. While the brushwork lacks the dense impasto and nuanced chiaroscuro that characterize Rembrandt's mature works, the painting nonetheless conveys a genuine sense of spiritual gravity. The faces of the mourners, though less psychologically complex than those in Rembrandt's own interpretations, still express quiet anguish and devotion. The limited color palette dominated by earthy browns, muted ochres, and soft whites reinforces the somber tone, creating a unified atmosphere of mourning and transcendence. This descent from the cross not only reveals the method by which Rembrandt instructed his pupils, but also underscores the workshop's emphasis on understanding emotion through structure and light. Van Rijn and others in Rembrandt's circle were trained to internalize the master's dramatic sensibility while experimenting with their own technical approaches. The painting thus becomes both a devotional image and a record of artistic apprenticeship, marking the transmission of vision from teacher to student. Viewed within the broader Rembrandt tradition, the painting exemplifies how the master's influence extended beyond his own hand to shape a generation of artists who carried his ideals into their own works. The anonymous or semi-collaborative nature of this descent speaks to the collective enterprise of 17th century art making, where genius could be both individual and shared. Though not a Rembrandt in the strictest sense, it remains profoundly Rembrandt-esque in conception and echo of his meditations on suffering, redemption, and the divine humanity of Christ. Saul and David, 1651-1658, attributed to Rembrandt van Rijn and/or his studio, stands among the most psychologically charged of the master's late religious works. Now housed in the Mauritshuis in The Hague, the painting interprets one of the most tragic relationships in the Old Testament, the tormented King Saul and the youthful David, whose harp playing alone can soothe the monarch's spiritual anguish. Though its authorship remains debated, with evidence suggesting participation from Rembrandt's assistants, the composition's emotional gravity, chiaroscuro, and narrative subtlety unmistakably reflect the guiding hand of Rembrandt himself. Drawn from 1 Samuel 16:14-23 and 1 Samuel 18:8-11, the scene portrays Saul at the moment of inner disquiet, tormented by the evil spirit that God has sent to him after the Holy Spirit's departure. His head, heavy with sorrow, rests in his hand as tears glisten under Rembrandt's subdued light. Opposite him, David sits in calm concentration, plucking the harp with a gesture of compassion and restraint. The contrast between the king's spiritual desolation and the youth's serenity encapsulates the duality of divine punishment and divine grace, a recurring theme in Rembrandt's late biblical works. The psychological tension within the painting is heightened by the artist's use of light as moral metaphor. The soft illumination that caresses David's face and instrument signifies purity and divine favor, while Saul remains enveloped in shadow, a visual manifestation of spiritual abandonment. The close proximity of the figures, nearly touching, creates an atmosphere of oppressive intimacy, as if the viewer is drawn into the tragic emotional current binding both men. Technically, the work demonstrates the evolution of Rembrandt's late style. A looser brushstroke, a deep and tonally unified palette, and a preference for emotional suggestion over narrative detail. Yet, the presence of workshop intervention, perhaps in areas of David's face or the drapery, introduces a slight inconsistency in execution. Even so, these variations underscore the collaborative nature of Rembrandt's studio, where students were encouraged to emulate the master's psychological realism while interpreting their assigned passages. The painting's 19th century history adds another layer of poignancy. At some point during that century, the canvas was cut into two unequal parts, perhaps to be sold separately, reflecting a disregard for its compositional unity. The pieces were later rejoined, restoring the dramatic and emotional continuity of the original vision. The scars of this separation remain visible upon close inspection, serving as both literal and metaphorical evidence of fragmentation and reconciliation, a fate not unlike that of its subjects. In its present state, Saul and David remains a masterful exploration of spiritual affliction and redemptive music, balancing human fragility with divine intervention. Whether executed entirely by Rembrandt or completed by his studio under his design, the work stands as an enduring meditation on the limits of faith and the solace of art. Its quiet, somber power continues to affirm Rembrandt's preeminence as the supreme interpreter of the human soul. Aristotle with a bust of Homer, also known as Aristotle contemplating a bust of Homer, is an oil-on-canvas painting created by Rembrandt in 1663 for Don Antonio Ruffo, a Sicilian nobleman and art collector. The work is currently housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York. The painting depicts the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle resting his right hand upon a bust of Homer, the legendary poet, while wearing a gold chain, a medallion, a gift from Alexander the Great, one of his most famous pupils. The contrast between Aristotle's rich garments and Homer's plain sculpted likeness evokes a dialogue between worldly honor and intellectual virtue, between material wealth and spiritual wisdom. Executed during Rembrandt's mature period, the work is celebrated for its subdued palette, atmospheric light, and profound psychological depth. Rather than idealizing the philosopher, Rembrandt portrays him in quiet contemplation, his gaze downward, as if weighed by the transience of fame and the immortality of art and thought. The painting's interpretation remains open, with art historians debating whether Rembrandt intended to express the philosopher's melancholy, his reverence for poetic genius, or the tension between power and intellect. Nevertheless, it stands as one of the artist's most introspective masterpieces, an embodiment of philosophical reflection rendered through light and shadow. Painted around 1654, Woman Bathing, also known as A Woman Bathing in a Stream, belongs to Rembrandt's late period, a time marked by his profound introspection and psychological depth. The work was acquired by the National Gallery, London, in 1831 and has since been considered one of the most intimate and emotionally resonant portrayals of the artist's mature years. This painting exemplifies Rembrandt's rejection of the idealized classicism that dominated mid-17th century art. Instead, he embraced an unflinching realism that revealed the emotional and spiritual truth of his subjects. The woman, thought to be Hendrickje Stoffel's Rembrandt's companion, embodies a quiet authenticity far removed from the mythological perfection favored by his contemporaries. Rendered with broad, fluid brushstrokes and an earthy palette, the composition conveys a sense of immediacy and natural warmth. The figure, barefoot and partially clothed, lifts her garments as she steps into the water. The soft illumination focuses on her skin, creating a dialogue between light and shadow that heightens her physical presence while suggesting an inner vulnerability. The surrounding darkness isolates her form, transforming an everyday act of bathing into a moment of quiet transcendence. The painting has often been read as an expression of purity and introspection rather than sensuality. Some scholars have identified the subject as the nymph Callisto, surprised while bathing apart from Diana's attendants. However, the absence of mythological attributes points instead to Rembrandt's desire to depict a profoundly human experience, an intimate encounter between body, light, and water, revealing both physical realism and spiritual calm. Woman bathing has been celebrated as one of Rembrandt's most innovative and spontaneous works. Its loose, painterly execution inspired later generations of artists, particularly the Impressionists, who admired his capacity to capture life's immediacy with emotional depth. The painting's raw honesty and disregard for ideal beauty underscore Rembrandt's enduring influence on modern realism. Art historian Gary Schwartz described the work as an oil sketch, enlarged to the dimensions of a full-scale painting, a phrase that captures its vitality and experimental freedom. Indeed, Woman Bathing stands among Rembrandt's freshest and most original compositions, a testament to his mastery in transforming an ordinary private moment into a profound reflection on humanity itself. Painted in 1656 and now housed in the National Gallery, London, Portrait of Hendrickje Stoffels captures the deep emotional and personal connection between Rembrandt and his longtime companion. Hendrickje entered Rembrandt's household in 1647 as a maid, but soon became his lover and partner, remaining with him until her death in 1663. Their relationship, unconventional for the time, led to Hendrickje being summoned before the church council for living in sin with the painter, resulting in her suspension from communion. Despite these social and religious reprimands, the couple's bond endured, marked by loyalty and quiet defiance against societal judgment. This portrait exemplifies Rembrandt's late style, distinguished by broader, looser brushwork and a mastery of tonal harmony that conveys both psychological insight and physical presence. The artist's treatment of light envelops Hendrickje in a subdued glow, softening her features and drawing attention to the contemplative warmth of her expression. Her face emerges from the dark background with a serene dignity that transcends the merely descriptive, embodying the quiet intimacy of a private world shared between painter and sitter. Rembrandt's depiction of Hendrickje avoids idealization, revealing instead a profound sense of humanity. Her gentle gaze, directed slightly downward, and the subtle gesture of her hand disappearing into her fur robe evoke tenderness and vulnerability. The restrained palette rich in earth tones and deep shadow enhances the sense of introspection, while the textured handling of paint imbues the work with a living immediacy. Though deeply personal, the painting also resonates with universal emotional depth. Hendrickje is not merely a subject of affection. She becomes an emblem of quiet strength, enduring love, and acceptance amid hardship. The painting thus transcends portraiture to become an exploration of compassion and shared endurance, qualities that define Rembrandt's mature artistic vision. In the broader arc of Rembrandt's oeuvre, this portrait marks a turning point towards spiritual realism. It stands as a testament to his lifelong quest to depict truth through the play of light and shadow, not as moral contrast, but as the texture of human experience itself. The warmth and empathy radiating from Hendrickje's face embody the essence of Rembrandt's late works, where technique serves emotion, and every brushstroke becomes a pulse of life. Art critics have long admired the portrait for its quiet intimacy and psychological richness. Its informality and naturalism distinguish it from traditional commissioned portraits of the 17th century, suggesting a relationship of deep trust between artist and sitter. The result is one of Rembrandt's most personal and moving portrayals, a meditation on love, resilience, and the human spirit, rendered with the timeless compassion that defines his art. Completed in 1654, Bathsheba at her bath stands among Rembrandt's most profound and psychologically complex works. Housed in the Louvre, this oil on canvas reimagines the biblical story from 2 Samuel 11, in which King David, struck by Bathsheba's beauty, orchestrates her husband's death to claim her as his own. Yet rather than sensationalize the scene or render it as voyeuristic spectacle as many of his predecessors had done, Rembrandt centers the viewer's gaze on Bathsheba herself, transforming a tale of sin and desire into an intimate meditation on conscience, vulnerability, and fate. The model for Bathsheba is widely believed to be Hendrickje Stoffels, Rembrandt's companion and muse during this period. Her presence infuses the image with emotional authenticity, elevating it beyond moral narrative to personal reflection. Seated in stillness, Bathsheba holds David's letter, her gaze turned inward, the weight of her moral dilemma palpable. The artist's subtle modulation of light caressing her flesh with a golden radiance that contrasts against the somber background creates a dialogue between sensuality and sorrow. Rembrandt's treatment of the nude here marks a departure from idealized classical forms. The body is rendered with truth rather than perfection, full, warm, and human. Each brushstroke conveys both physical immediacy and inner tension. The rich textures of paint thickly laid in the flesh tones and softly diffused in the shadows enhance the tactile presence of the figure while suggesting an atmosphere of quiet contemplation. More than an illustration of scripture, the painting becomes a study of moral solitude. Bathsheba's expression resists simple interpretation, neither guilt nor innocence, but an uneasy awareness of consequence. Her introspection replaces the dramatic action of the biblical account. Rembrandt captures not the act, but the thought before the act. This psychological realism, rare in 17th century art, endows the work with timeless emotional resonance. The painting's composition, tight, cropped, and inward reflects Rembrandt's late stylistic maturity. The space is compressed, the light concentrated, and the narrative distilled to its essential human moment. Through this visual economy, the artist achieves a kind of sacred intimacy that transforms the biblical into the universal. The story of a woman confronting the weight of desire and destiny. Art critics have long hailed Bathsheba at her bath as one of the pinnacles of Western painting. Kenneth Clark called it Rembrandt's greatest painting of the nude, praising its union of sensuality and moral gravity. Its empathy and insight into the female condition reveal the artist's unmatched capacity to depict not just appearance but soul. In Bathsheba's quiet melancholy, Rembrandt achieves a balance of passion and pity, an image of human frailty illuminated by divine light. Painted around the 1650s, the Polish Rider remains one of the most enigmatic works traditionally attributed to Rembrandt. Now housed in the Frick collection in New York, the painting depicts a young man on horseback traversing a shadowed, indeterminate landscape. The rider's attire, an exotic blend of Eastern European and military dress paired with his contemplative expression, evokes both chivalric romance and quiet introspection. Although the painting was long accepted as an authentic Rembrandt, questions regarding its authorship and subject have persisted, adding to its enduring aura of mystery. The identity of the rider has been a source of speculation for centuries. Some scholars have proposed that he represents a specific historical figure, perhaps a Polish nobleman such as Lisawczyk cavalry officer, or even a young emissary. Others interpret him as an allegorical figure, a personification of courage, youth, or the journey of the soul. Yet Rembrandt's interest in psychological depth suggests that the work may transcend portraiture altogether, offering instead a meditation on solitude, destiny, and the human passage through an uncertain world. Stylistically, the painting bears the hallmarks of Rembrandt's late manner: subdued tonality, broad brushwork, and a masterful command of chiaroscuro. The light falls unevenly upon the rider, illuminating his youthful face and pale cloak while leaving the landscape in near obscurity. This interplay of radiance and shadow heightens the emotional tension, situating the figure between the known and the unknown, a liminal space that mirrors the painting's own interpretive ambiguity. The background, rendered with sketch-like freedom, reinforces this sense of transience. The vague horizon, the indistinct vegetation, and the muted palette all evoke a world fading into mist. Unlike the heroic equestrian portraits of his contemporaries, Rembrandt's rider is not triumphant, but contemplative. His posture, slightly forward yet restrained, implies motion without urgency, a spiritual rather than physical journey. Throughout his career, Rembrandt often returned to themes of inner struggle and revelation. The Polish rider can be seen as an extension of this vision, a portrait not of nobility or conquest, but of the human condition itself. The rider's quiet resolve amid the encroaching darkness reflects the artist's profound understanding of the tension between faith and uncertainty, courage and isolation. Art critics have long admired the painting's haunting beauty and psychological subtlety. Whether by Rembrandt himself or a close pupil from his circle, it stands as a testament to the spiritual depth of the Dutch master's influence. As Henry Frick's most beloved acquisition, the Polish rider continues to invite contemplation, a solitary traveler whose destination remains forever just beyond the horizon. Painted in 1655, Slaughtered Ox stands among the most visceral and enigmatic works of Rembrandt's late period. Now housed in the Louvre, the painting depicts the carcass of a bull or ox, suspended by its hind legs in a dim wooden interior. The image is both literal and symbolic, an unflinching study of flesh and mortality rendered with Rembrandt's unparalleled sensitivity to light and texture. Though the subject may seem purely utilitarian, the composition transcends the genre of still life to reach a level of spiritual and existential resonance rarely achieved in Western art. The painting continues a Northern European tradition of butchery scenes, following works such as Peter Aertsen's A Meat Stall, with the Holy Family giving alms, and Annabelle Carracci's Butcher's Shop. Yet Rembrandt diverges from his predecessors by stripping the scene of anecdote or moralizing detail. His ox is monumental and solitary, its form dominating the composition with a sculptural gravity. The raw red tones of the flesh contrast sharply with the dark recesses of the interior, where a small, barely visible woman peers from behind a half-open door, a subtle intrusion of life into a scene of death. Formally, Rembrandt's command of chiaroscuro transforms the carcass into an almost sacred object. The fall of light across the animal's flayed body articulates every tendon and muscle, while the rough brushwork conveys both the tactile substance of the meat and the emotional intensity of the artist's gaze. The vertical hanging of the ox, arms splayed and ribcage exposed, unmistakably recalls the crucifixion, a visual echo of sacrifice and redemption. The painting thus occupies a liminal space between still life and religious allegory, between the corporeal and the transcendent. Thematically, Slaughtered Ox has been read as a meditation on mortality and suffering, a vanitas image that transforms a butcher's carcass into a symbol of human fragility. In the Christian tradition, the slaughtered beast evokes the fatted calf of the Prodigal Son parable, and by extension, Christ's sacrifice for humanity. Yet Rembrandt's treatment remains ambiguous. There is no overt narrative, no sentimentality, only the stark confrontation of flesh, time, and decay. The woman's presence, understated yet deliberate, heightens the realism while also suggesting a quiet witness to death, or perhaps to renewal. This work also reflects Rembrandt's artistic and personal condition during the 1650s. Bankrupt, socially isolated and deeply introspective, he found in the raw immediacy of flesh a mirror for his own humanity. The ox's massive body, rendered with unflinching honesty, may be read as both a symbol of endurance and a reflection of the artist's existential struggle, painting as an act of confrontation with mortality itself. Art critics have long regarded Slaughtered Ox as one of Rembrandt's most profound statements. Its influence spans centuries, inspiring artists such as Eugène Delacroix, Honoré Daumier, Chaim Soutine, and Francis Bacon, the latter transforming the image into the haunting figure with meat. Through its monumental simplicity and emotional gravity, Slaughtered Ox endures not merely as a study of anatomy, but as a meditation on the human condition, a work where matter and spirit, death and transcendence, coexist within the same trembling light.